And Vance Joseph getting some love on the sideline. And why wouldn't he? His defense has had a tremendous day.
They really have. And this has nothing to do with the defense, just Johnny on the spot. DJ Jones. Benito was all over the quarterback late in the game. As soon as PJ Walker came in, then the huge hit from Locke. Totally legal, by the way. And then you got Jewell in there, causing problems. What a day for this defense. Can't say enough about this Broncos unit. As a whole, on offense, they've started to figure it out. Defense.
Now this offense will just try to run this one out.
And special teams, I mean, Will Lutz has been solid. I think he's like 24-26 on the season with field goals. And I mean, I'd give credit to Mike Westhoff if he didn't blast me in his book. So I'll give credit to Ben Kotwika for the great special teams play. Great job, Benny.
So you see the remaining schedule for Sean Payton's Broncos. They'll get a test next week at Houston. That's a tough one. Then at the Chargers. Face off on the road at the Lions before the Patriots, Chargers, and Raiders close out the season. But there's a lot of ats on that schedule. If you're a Broncos fan, that's what's going to concern you. You've been really good at home, but only 2 home games remain for Denver on the year. But only 2 home games
this special presentation on Altitude Sports Radio. The Broncos game is over. Let's hear from you.
Hey, boy, I'll keep it real.
Be heard now. This is the No Huddle Postgame Show with Rob Trujillo.
Good job, man. Get loose. Communicate.
It's Denver's only commercial-free postgame show featuring your reaction from start to finish on Altitude Sports Radio 950 and the ASR app. Here's...
All right, you're up.
Crank that music. Let's go.
Yes, sir. The Broncos win their 5th in a row. What a turnaround. From 1-5 to 6-5 and squarely in the playoff race. A dominant win over a 7-3 team. And I know. Rookie quarterback and all that noise. They put up 29 points. 29 points on this vaunted Browns defense. Arguably the best in the NFL. And they win it 29-12. It honestly, I gotta be completely honest, it did not feel like it was even that close. There were a couple moments that you held your breath. There were a couple moments that you said, is this the ship turning a little bit? I think we all know that feeling as Bronco fans, that if you watch this team for long enough, you start to get that, especially over the last 7 years, that feeling of, oh boy, here we go again. And there were moments in this game, but for the most part, the Broncos handled business today against the 7-3 Browns team. A team that was number 1 in the wild card, and the AFC playoff picture just looks crazy after today. But the Broncos now 6-5 in it. They're tied with the Bills. The Bills still playing right now at 6-5, and the Houston Texans, who lost today. Those teams are out of the playoffs currently. Indianapolis is in the 7th seed at 6-5. We'll see how that updates throughout the day as we move teams in and out with wins and losses. But right now, there's a team that you're tied with record-wise that's in the playoffs. And that's just crazy to me. I am Rob Trujillo. We're doing the No Huddle Postgame Show. It is on AM 950 due to Nuggets coverage. My guy, the radio machine, Mark Springer, back at the command center on the ones and twos. Spring, I just real quick, I mean, how does it feel to sit there and say that you've got a team that has the same record of you that's in a playoff spot right now after you started 1-5?
I don't know what bizarro universe we're living in right now.
I know.
This is weird. From 1-5 to 6-5, 5 straight wins now. They're one of the more dangerous teams in the AFC. Although, you look right now, this game's in the middle of the fourth quarter. The Eagles lead the Bills 28-24. The Eagles have come back to take the lead in that game, but Rob, 28-24.
Yeah.
With 2 of the more legitimate teams in the NFL over the past couple seasons. Now, Broncos scored 29 today, so that's right there. That's kind of right there in the mix. But, a Dorian Thompson-Robinson, P.J. Walker-led Browns team is not Josh Allen or Jalen Hurts leading the Bills or the Eagles.
Sure.
But, I see a score like that, and I'm like, okay, that's like a legitimate football game going on right now. But this was good. This was really good, and it continues to be really good, especially compared to what we've seen over the past several years.
And Spring, that's a 7-3 team. So, we can take all the shots we want at the quality of that football team, but they were 7-3 in the top wild card coming into the day. Little Beefy's on Twitch. The Twitch is on my personal Twitch if you're looking for it. It's /Rob Trujillo. You can find it on social media. But Little Beefy's on the Twitch. Says, never doubted him once, best team in the league. But it kind of felt like that. Not that they're actually the best team in the league, but there was a lot of confidence on that field today. And the swag they had, dancing on the sidelines. There's a different feeling. And if you've been around a winning locker room, you know that there's just a little bit different of a feeling, and it seems like the guys are really feeling themselves right now. And how could you not be? 5-game winning streak, first time since 2015 that they have won 5 games in a row. It's a feeling that hasn't been at Dove Valley for a really long time. And I got to be honest, at the beginning of this year, no way in hell I thought this was going to happen. But you're getting what this team is supposed to be good at. 169 yards rushing today. Javonte Williams, 18 carries, 65 yards. Not great. Samaje Perine, 7 carries, 55 yards. Good. Very good. But altogether, 39 carries, 169 yards. Russell Wilson, 13 of 22 for 134 and a touch. You know, he was putting up those numbers last year, and we were saying, it's not good enough. If the defense played better, though, you might be able to sneak away with a win. Well, here you are. He's thrown for 134 yards, and you're winning games. And that's kind of the craziest thing to me. This team is designed to run the football. I think there's no doubt about it. And Russell Wilson was a threat with his legs today. He's got 11 carries for 34 yards, but that includes kneel downs. So it's not quite representative of how lethal he was with his legs today. Those 34 yards that he gained really opened up the offense. And if you continue to do, there were called read plays where he had the option to take the ball, and he did it several times. And that, I think, made a huge difference to open up the offense today. All right, we'll be joined by Brett Kane, of course, of Mosier, Lombardi, and Kane on 92.5. He'll be with us in about 5 minutes. And then D-Mac, hopefully from the stadium. We'll see if we can get him in. If he, of course, is going to sit in on the press conference with Sean Payton and then go into the locker room. Hopefully at the end of the show today, we can get him on and hear his thoughts and how that locker room feels. The guys are dancing on the sideline. Since when? Do we remember 70-20? That was this season, guys. It's just mind-blowing to me, and this was just a very workmanlike, come out and take care of business kind of win. Now, the one thing, Broncos fans very upset across Twitter, across my people that I talk to on text and so on and so forth, about the Baron Browning hit. It felt like that might be the moment. That penalty might be the change in momentum that you feared, that you didn't want, that you didn't need. I know Brett Kane is going to yell at me for this, and I think, Spring, you might yell at me for this too. I agree. It's not a penalty. I understand when you say it was a clean hit or that's soft. I understand all that. But you have to know that if you hit him that high and that hard, even in any scenario, you're going to get a flag. Even if it's a clean hit, you're going to get a flag. And it was 3rd and, I think, 12, something like that. And he's at his own end zone, at his own goal line. He's got no chance to pick up that first down. So people are saying, well, what are you supposed to do? Escort him to the first down? No, but I just think you have to be smarter and know, yes, the NFL is awful. And their officiating is awful, and you're going to get a flag if you do that. Spring, what did you think of the hit and the penalty from Baron Browning that could have changed the game had it not been for them getting a little bit cute on the next possession?
Yeah, on that play, Cleveland's deep in their own territory, and I actually kind of like that play from Dorian Thompson-Robinson. It was Russell Wilson-esque. He's under siege, and he zigs one way, he zags the other way to buy himself some time. Unfortunately, he ran out of zags. And on his final cut back to his right, Baron Browning, boom, is right there. I like it from DTR, though, because he's just trying to give himself a window to throw that ball away, get out of the pocket, make it past the line of scrimmage. It's in theory, that's a clean play by Baron Browning. I'm with you, man. I don't disagree with anything you said. That's a clean hit, except he goes just a little high. It's not like it was helmet to helmet, though. It was really more shoulder to chest. I think that should be allowed. That being said, I know that they're just overly careful and cautious of higher hits. It's kind of that simple, and it's unfortunate because even with more players' safety-leaning rules, that still should be a clean hit. So what is Baron Browning supposed to do otherwise? The only thing that crosses my mind is you go more shoulder spear first into the stomach. Here's a possible problem with that. You go with that type of hit, and your weight naturally falls onto the quarterback. They're going to flag you for that because they will flag you for your weight going onto the quarterback. So it kind of is. I mean, that play right there is almost the perfect example of you are damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't.
Yep. 303-504-0925. We can't take calls because we're on the AM channel, but we can take texts. So text in and tell me what you think about this game, or hit us up on Twitch and tell me what you think about that hit. Because Spring, I think we're on the same page here. There's no way you're getting away without a flag there for hitting him as high as you did. Now, I agree with you. It's clean. But you have to know what the world is now. You know what I mean? And that is the world of the NFL. And it's not, it used to just be Tom Brady or Peyton Manning would get that call. It's not. Dorian Thompson-Robinson gets that call now.
It's almost like you just have to let up. And like the play was made, Browning didn't need to make the hit. Like the coverage downfield was good. Dorian Thompson-Robinson had nowhere to go with the ball. He's just throwing it away. But I understand as a pass rusher, you can't take that chance. You don't have eyes in the back of your head. You don't know what's back there, so you want to finish the play. But unfortunately, it is like nowadays, you just got to let him go.
Lil Beefy on Twitch says people arguing those roughing the passer calls sound like alcoholics asking why it's illegal for them to drive after having 4 beers. Like, you just have to know that that's the way it's going to be nowadays, And listen, it's asking a lot of the awareness of the pass rusher to ask this of Baron Browning. But what I'm asking of him is, know you're at the goal line, and the first down marker is at the 40-yard line. Like, he's not going to pick it up. He's not going to pick up that call. And so the only way he's picking up that first down is if there's a holding penalty in the defensive backfield or a pass interference call, or you put a hit on him and he gets a roughing the passer call. That's the only way he's picking that up. Now listen, it works out in terms of karma, right? It works out in the sense that you get them to try some crazy play that's some sort of double reverse, and they fumble the ball and you get the ball back. So all of us who say like, hey man, he was just playing football. You can't flag him for that. All of us that say that, you end up winning. Because the Broncos get the ball back, and I believe that led to a field goal. That said, you can't roll the dice like that. It was a 7-3 football team who the drive before, I believe, their last drive, was a real strong drive down the field for a touchdown. And you gave them life with that roughing the passer call. So I just think you gotta be careful. 303-504-0925 if you want to text in and tell us what you think about that call. 1061 says this is the NFL and refs are still sending Sean Payton a message. That is a very interesting take. I really honestly do think that's a really good take. Because
Sorry to go to Brett.
do we have Brett? Yeah, we can bring in Brett.
We're gonna give this a go.
Okay.
We're a little uncertain here in the 950 studios, but I believe I have it set up. So
All right.
I'm just gonna dive into the deep end.
All right, let's dive into the deep end. He, of course, does the appetizer hour from 6 to 7, and then is part of Mosier and Lombardi and Kane. Mornings, he's the first one through the wall that has to deal with all of you in the morning, whether you're happy or grumpy, and luckily you will be happy tomorrow. Brett Kane, can you hear me, sir?
Yeah. What a weird time, huh?
Yeah.
We have actual competitive football to talk about. I saw the graphic earlier during the game that they're in the playoff hunt, and the teams that surround them, they have tiebreakers that they've won against. It's a weird time.
the Bills are still playing right now. They're up on the Eagles, but the Colts are currently in the 7th playoff spot, Brett, at 6-5 with your same record. And that, to me, after starting 1-5, is just absolute madness. I mean, that is crazy. All right, we've got
made a giant. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I'm just saying they've made a giant adjustment here, and just it feels like this conservative nature of how they're playing offense, as boring and frustrating as that might be to some people, it's working because you aren't turning the ball over, you're getting turnovers, and the one compliment, and this is maybe the most important thing you can have for an offense, when something needs to happen, they tend to make it happen, and it doesn't matter if it's Sutton or Troutman putting his kneecap on the very edge of the end zone or whatever it is. They seem to just make plays.
Yeah, and have for a couple of games now, and I remember, and I think it was your morning show talking about how they just earlier in the year they didn't know how to win. They didn't know how to make those plays at the right time, and you were just kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop always. And that's why we were talking about the Baron Browning penalty. That kind of felt like, oh no, are we doing it again? And yet the Broncos just very calmly steady the ship and win 29-12, Brett.
Well, and look, I know that you've probably had texters and people giving you calls and stuff like that talking about the Browning stuff. I won't dive too deep into that. You know I don't like it. But to your point, whenever a play like that has happened in the past, it always felt like, oh, that's the one that changes things. That's the one that leads to the snowball effect, and now the game is lost. And they had multiple occasions where that could have happened. You could point to the Cortland Sutton offensive pass interference from earlier in the game. You could point to the P.J. Locke hit against Njoku when he was in the end zone where they held him on 3rd down, and then that gave him a 1st down. You could point to Browning. You could point to a whole bunch of different things that I feel like if this was week 3, they crumble after that, they give up a touchdown, something wrong happens, and they end up losing the game. But mentally, they're so much stronger than they were at the beginning of the season, and I attribute that to winning. When you win, you start to gain confidence, and you start to gain belief, and now here you are after 5 straight W's in the plus end of the over-under 500 territory. And, I mean, it's not the exact same quote as Rick James and Chappelle's show, but belief is a hell of a drug as well as the other thing that he said.
And it's true. I mean, they're dancing on the sideline. And I think the better example of that was last week when you're talking about that Vikings game. They needed 2 separate drives to go their way. The offensive drive to score a touchdown, and then the defensive drive to make sure that they don't go get a field goal and win the game. And that, to me, was the first time that they really put their foot down and said, hey, we are a different team now. We are going to learn how to win and finish these games off rather than letting them unravel. And I thought you saw it again today. All right, so I want to ask you about P.J. Locke, because he absolutely balled out today, and I don't know if I'm getting too carried away saying I think he's an upgrade over Kareem Jackson.
It's arguable. I'm not going to say definitively that he is, but I'll tell you this, like, how crazy is this to think about, Rob? He was the 4th best safety entering this season.
Yeah.
Like, it was Simmons, Kareem, Hayden Stearns, and then P.J. Locke. And the plays that he made, again, it's such a weird thing to discuss because there's good and bad. Like, you like the physicality, but you don't like them leading the penalties, and that's the discussion we've had about Kareem. It's like, oh, I love that he plays physically, but you can't let it take you out of the game for 4 weeks at a time. The thing is, P.J. Locke steps in, and he looks exactly like Kareem, the exact same style that he played with. And I'll give the Broncos credit. Did it hurt them at pretty critical times in this game by picking up 15-yarders? Yeah, it did. But at the end of the day, that physicality, they out-physicaled the Cleveland Browns, which is a very tough thing to do with the defense that they have. They out-physicaled them to the point that they lost their backup quarterback. They lost Myles Garrett, who left his left arm hanging for about 3/4 of that game.
Yeah.
They lost Amari Cooper. They hit, and they are not scared. And scared maybe is the key word in all of that, because in the past, I don't think we could say it, but I think that Dennis Joseph earlier this year, after they gave up 70 points to the Dolphins, was like, I don't care how this needs to happen. We need to start hitting people and playing a little bit more free, and I think that's led to turnovers. It's led to big plays defensively, and ultimately it's led to wins.
Yeah, and that is not only, I mean, I understand the quarterback situation for them isn't ideal, but that's a 7-3 team that has won games by out-physicaling people. And
Yes.
Again, you today just handled business. All right, so you said the good and the bad. I want to talk about the offense a little bit. They put up 29 points, so I don't want to be too hard on them. And there were times that they looked great. The running game looked great. Russell Wilson using his legs as a weapon absolutely made a difference in that game. But at the end of the day, Russell Wilson's 13 of 22 for 134 yards and a touchdown. And it just brings me back to last year. Because last year we would see those stat lines and say, what's going on here? It's not good enough. And after this game, I feel great about how they are offensively. How did you feel like the offense played today?
I would give it, like, if it's a letter grade, I'd say a B- at best and a C+ at worst. But again, it's almost like you've got to know what you're going up against. You knew Cleveland wasn't putting 30 points on the board today. You didn't have to play aggressively. And I think a lot of what we've seen over the last few weeks, and especially during this win streak, they've said, I think playing conservatively on offense is going to be good enough. And Sean Payton's made that gamble, and he's been right for 5 straight weeks. I think it's more of a game plan thing than it is you can just judge Russell, because if he was back in Seattle still, I'm sure they would do the old play action. He runs out of the pocket and chucks it 60 yards downfield, and you hope for the best. But I think this is all a game plan thing. It's obvious. I mean, every week, and I don't know what he said after the game today, but it feels like almost every week Sean Payton has said, well, they're playing shell coverage. They're playing zones. We're taking underneath throws. I think he's pounding that into Russell's head saying, hey, if you see this coverage, don't make a mistake. We're going to bank that the other team's going to do it. And then against a team like Cleveland, where their quarterbacks entering that game between P.J. Walker and Dorian Thompson-Robinson, they had a combined 1 touchdown and 9 interceptions on the year. He said, they'll make the mistakes. If we don't, we'll win. And I think that's what happened. You get in good field position, you capitalize, and not to be a broken record on this, but make the plays when you have to, like the Troutman play. Make the big third downs, the throws to Cortland Sutton and stuff like that. That's really all it's going to take for this team to win when the defense is getting turnovers and playing as well as they are.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, it's like I don't think they're playing great, but I think they're playing the way that they have to win.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's a great point to make, is that they're playing, I was going to say clean football, but then the hits come back up. They're playing mistake-free football for the most part right now, and it's making a huge difference. All right, so we fought about it a little bit on Twitter. I'll get you out of here on this one. Say your piece about the Baron Browning hit, because I think Spring and I are on the same side about you have to know better than that, and I know you hate how that worked out. So go ahead and give us your 2 cents on the Baron Browning penalty and if you thought it should have been called.
I don't know what they wanted to do. Like, if Dorian Thompson-Robinson pump fakes that pass, and basically what we're talking about here, it's not like where he hit him. He didn't hit him in the helmet. He hit him in the chest. He hit him hard. So we're talking about the intensity in which you can hit somebody, and I think that's a tough thing to say when Dorian Thompson-Robinson is running at Baron Browning. He's running at him. I don't know how you gear down and kind of hit him to make sure he falls. I don't know what you're expecting the defender to do in that situation. And I get what you guys are saying. Like, once you see it, you're like, well, that's probably a flag. I don't know what you tell Baron Browning to do other than don't hit him that hard.
Yeah.
But how is he supposed to think about that in the middle of the play when who knows if he's going to pump fake that and take it down and start running with it? You don't know. And it's the same thing as like P.J. Locke earlier in the game. He got penalized for hitting Njoku hard, who's, by the way, a gargantuan.
Yeah.
I don't think you could ever break that guy. I mean, didn't he have like a propane tank blow up in his face earlier this year?
Yes,
and he
did.
played like 2 days later?
Yes, he did.
But the point is, like, you don't know if he's going to go up and make the catch. So what if he does? And then you make that hit and it jars the ball loose. Is P.J. Locke responsible to know whether he's going to catch the ball or not? That's the stuff I don't get. That's what frustrates me.
Yeah. All right, Keener, I appreciate you jumping on for more than 5 minutes and hanging out with us after this Broncos win. He is the first one through in the morning show. He'll be on at 6 a.m. For the appetizer hour, and then 7 o'clock with Mojo, Lombardi, and Kane. Kane, thanks for joining us, man. Appreciate you.
Thank you, boys. Talk to you later.
Love you. Goodbye. That's a sign-off. All right. Listen, 303-504-0925. I totally understand what Kaner is saying. Like, for the Baron Browning penalty, what are you going to tell him to do? And my answer is, you got to tell him to pull up. You have to tell him to pull up. And I know for all of us, even if you played football for some midget organization somewhere, some, peewee thing, you're sitting there watching saying, that's not football. I get it. But I think you just have to be aware of what the NFL is, what the officiating is, and what they're trying to do. And if you are going, and he does launch, right? He launches at him, but he hits him with his shoulder. And that's what makes it legal. He doesn't hit him in the head, and he hits him with his shoulder. But he launched, and he was high, and if you launch and you're high, the NFL is going to throw a flag on you nowadays. I know, it's soft, it's not football, I know. But the NFL is going to throw a flag on you nowadays. And as a pass rusher, I just think you got to be aware of that. All right, let's run this down a little bit. Bills game still going on. Eagles have now tied that at 31 apiece. Bills currently tied with the Broncos at 6-5, as well as the Houston Texans and Indianapolis Colts. There's a 4-way tie right now for the final playoff spot. The Colts are currently the team in that final playoff spot at 6-5. The Bills, if they win today, will move up because they have not had their bye yet. So they will be 7-5. If they lose, they will drop back down to 11th, and there will be a 3-way tie that the Broncos are in for that final playoff spot with a Bills loss today. And it looks like that one is going into overtime now. So we will see what happens in a rainy Philadelphia. Who thought we were going to be scoreboard watching the Houston Texans, Indianapolis Colts, and Buffalo Bills as I do a Denver Broncos postgame show after Thanksgiving? I mean, it's a wild time that we're in. If you were part of these shows earlier when we were talking tank, we were talking get your next quarterback, do you eat the Russell Wilson cap hit? You were cutting players who are contributing other places across the league. You were trading players for almost nothing. Just crazy. Just crazy that you find yourself here right now as the Broncos get a win today to win their 5th in a row. If you didn't hear earlier, their first 5-game win streak since 2015. And taking a look at the rest of the schedule now, one of the teams that you're tied with is the 6-5 Texans. They lost today to Jacksonville, who, by the way, for a moment in time today was the number 1 seed in the AFC. Kansas City with a win has taken that number 1 seed back with them. But your top 4 seeds right now are Kansas City, Jacksonville, Miami, and Baltimore, which is just, I don't think anybody would have picked that. Some people might have picked one of those teams to take over a division, but I don't think anybody would have picked all of those teams to be leading divisions after Thanksgiving. So next week turns into an absolutely massive game. This game has moved from a 2 o'clock start to an 11 o'clock start. Texans and Broncos in Houston. And it's going to be the featured game of the day. 2 teams at 6-5, and the winning team is going to be in a good spot to try to get a playoff berth because you are going to give a loss to one of those teams that you're tied with and have a win yourself. Huge, just absolutely massive, monumental game next week against the Texans. And when you looked at that game at the beginning of the year, you're like, maybe it'll be fun to watch C.J. Stroud. We hope it matters for the Broncos. likely won't matter for the Texans. And it is turning into the premier game for the first week of December, Houston versus Denver at 11 o'clock. It'll definitely be the feature game in that window. There's some other really good games next week, including Philadelphia and San Francisco, but just absolutely massive game next week. Then the week after that, you're at the Chargers. And you're above the Chargers right now, and you got to keep them down. You really do. You got to win that game to keep them down. It's going to be a crowded middle of the AFC right now. So your next two games are huge, as was this one, playing a team that you're probably going to be fighting for wild card spots with. As of right now, you've got wins over teams like the Bills and the Browns, who you could be tied with for a playoff spot, and those head-to-head tiebreakers might matter. So you're at the Texans, you're at the Chargers, and then you're at the Lions. A tough little stretch here, but if you can stay hot, you can really do some damage in the playoff race. Then you finally come back home, you get a home game versus the Patriots, a home game versus the Chargers, and you finish the season at the Raiders. I don't think there's any reason that they can't win 4 of these games. And I was looking at this schedule earlier in the year saying, tell me where the next win comes from, because I wasn't entirely sure that there was another win on the schedule. And now I'm looking at it saying, you could probably get 4 of these. You might even be able to get 5 of these. And end up with 10 or 11 wins and in a playoff spot. Spring, I don't know how closely you've been following like the Texans and the Chargers and stuff like that, but I just want your take on how you feel against these other wild card playoff teams that in the AFC. The Broncos have come up with wins against a lot of them. Well, a couple of them, I guess I should say. And they have an opportunity to get wins against a couple more. Just from the eye test, tell me how you feel as a Bronco fan watching these other wild card teams saying, hey, how do we compare, and do you think we're going to be there at the end?
Yeah, Rob, I want to give you my take on that, but ask that same question right now to Darren McKee. He is on hold. He's ready to go.
Oh, D-Mac. All right. We welcome in Darren McKee, 12 to 3 every day on Altitude Sports Radio for PhD. D-Mac, thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. It sounds like, what are you, just walking out of the locker room there, D-Mac?
Dude, no joke. I just fist bumped Greg Penner right there. That just happened. So, he's a good dude, man.
Yeah, well.
He's a good dude, and I'm happy for him, and happy for this whole organization, for sure.
We were talking about the swag that team has on the sidelines, in the locker room. It feels like they're starting to believe. And my question to Spring before we came to you was, just eye test-wise, I mean, that's a 7-3 team that has won games by manhandling people, and you were absolutely game today. And you won 29-12. I mean, it was a pretty dominant victory. These teams that are around you in the wild card, you beat the Bills. You know what I mean? You beat the Browns. Now you look like you're a legitimate playoff contender and could win 10 or 11 games, D-Mac.
Oh, yeah. The conversation has completely changed. And it's not about, are they on a roll? Can they get it together? You're 6-5. You're the same record as the Buffalo Bills and a bunch of other playoff contending teams were going into this game. You're 6-5. 6-5? 6-5, you're talking about what you can do to make the playoffs. That's it. The end. The conversation has completely changed 100% from a 1-5 team. They are the hottest team in the NFL. They just beat down the Browns with a very physical game plan to load up in the box, challenge the Browns to throw, which they did, and they won that coaching battle. They out-physicaled them. They outcoached them. They outplayed them. It was going to be a pounded-out ground sort of attack, period. We knew that going into it. It's just that the Broncos were able to execute it so much better than the Browns. And I was just talking to Mike McGlinchey, and he said how proud he was of Garrett Bowles for shutting down Myles Garrett. He should be. That is a hell of a win for Garrett Bowles. Tremendous win for the Broncos. Unbelievable.
It really is incredible. And when you look at this 5-game winning streak, they've done it a whole lot of different ways, D-Mac. If you look at the stats for today's game, the offense, didn't do anything really special. They just made plays when they needed to make plays. I think Russell Wilson's legs were a weapon that opened it up a little bit, but it's not like they dominated in the run game, and Russell Wilson ended up with 134 yards passing. And still, they find a way to pull out the game in this knockdown, drag-out kind of contest.
Yeah, but they executed exactly. I get it, the numbers. I'm not really all that concerned with the numbers. How well did they execute their game plan?
Yeah.
And I would say fantastic. Russ did cough the ball up once. He did. And they have not turned the ball over all that much. And when he did, it was hustling after gaining a first down. And, we probably should have gone a little bit quicker. But, man, that's just playing football, being aggressive. The Broncos got 3 turnovers, 4th down stops, safeties. The Broncos kicked the Browns' ass. I don't know how else you can say it. Up and down the field, they truly did. They kicked the Browns' butt. This really wasn't that close of a game. And I know everybody's looking for some fireworks. Well, we didn't think there were going to be any fireworks in this game. We thought this was going to be a grounded-out physical game. It was. And the Broncos were the bullies, not the Browns.
Yeah. Not
the 7-3 Browns with the number one red zone defense, or not, number one defense on 3rd down. Myles Garrett, great player, all that. No. As it coming from their division, I'm rolling my eyes, the toughest division in football. It was the Broncos that beat down the Browns, man. Hey, let's not play any games here. This was a physical-ass game, and the Broncos won the street fight.
All right, so tell me about P.J. Locke, because I asked this question to Brett Kane, who joined me a little bit earlier, and he said, I'm not quite ready to say this, but is P.J. Locke an upgrade over Kareem Jackson right now? Because you are still getting the physicality.
It's funny because he got a 15-yard penalty
Yep.
as well, didn't he?
Yep.
And, that was like, I don't know, I'm rolling my eyes at that. The Baron Browning one is so frustrating because you really do wonder, well, what is the dude supposed to do? But I guess he launched a little bit. We'll see what the fine is and what happens there. This is the NFL. This is the way they want the game to be played. But, I asked Sean Payton afterwards about, being physical, and he's like, this is just this is what you have to do to establish the identity they want. So,
okay.
I don't know, man. You may have to take a penalty here and there. The difference is Kareem was just doing it over and over and over again. Like Baron Browning can't do that again next week, and the week after, and the week after that.
So let's talk about that. Let's talk about that Baron Browning play, though, because I understand where everybody who's upset about it is coming from. It's soft, quote unquote. It was a clean hit. He does launch, but he launches at and ends up hitting him with his shoulder in his chest. So by the letter of the law, it's a clean hit. But what I was saying and what I stand by is you have to know if you're Baron Browning that he is throwing that ball from his goal line and the first down sticks are at the 35, and the only way he's picking up that first down is if you get a roughing the passer penalty on yourself. So I feel like you have to ask the defensive player, even though it's soft and it's not football, I feel like you have to ask the defensive player, yes, to pull up in that situation.
Yeah, but again, it's I wouldn't try to do that to take away the nature of the entire game. Kareem Jackson has to change things. But listen, man, I wasn't thrilled about it. It's nebulous what they call, what they don't call.
Yeah.
He certainly hit him clean with the shoulder. But I guess you'd have to say, well, he launched himself. I don't know, whatever, man. It's a tricky penalty, but it hardly cost him the game. I don't even remember what the Browns did on that drive.
That was the fumble.
The Browns were. That was okay. All right. So listen, man. Listen, Robert, what are you doing, man? You're all the Debbie Downer here. The Broncos just kicked ass. They won 5 in a row. What are you talking about?
Hey, you brought up the Baron Browning thing. I just wanted to ask the question. All right. So, but what I started talking about was P.J. Locke, because I think, from the very first series defensively, I thought he was terrific today. I thought he made a bunch of really nice plays, and I don't want to say he's better than Kareem Jackson because I don't think he is, but he might be playing better, right now.
Oh, I think he's I don't know why you're hesitating. I don't think it's even close. I think he's a much better option than Kareem Jackson. Why are you hesitating about that? And listen, it wasn't clear this week if he was even going to play. Yeah. But I saw him practicing Thursday and more Friday and looked okay and, looked great today. But he is nowhere close to 100%. So it's a warrior gutty move by P.J. Locke to get called up when they needed him. And I thought he played really impactful, really good. And, he's 1,000% better option than Kareem Jackson. I don't think that's even close.
Yeah. All right, last thing I want to ask you about before we let you go here. Next week's game, man, it's against the Houston Texans, who you're currently tied with in the standings. And right now, the Bills just took the lead in overtime. But currently, a team that you're tied with is in that final playoff spot. That's the Colts at 6-5. The Texans are right there with you too. It's now the premier game in the window, in the morning window for next Sunday, and early in December, the Broncos and the Houston Texans have a heavyweight bout next week that could help decide a playoff spot, as you once again are playing a team who you're in contact with for one of these wild card positions in the AFC.
Well, I think this would be the third week in a row the Broncos have played a young quarterback. And Stroud, I think, is special, definitely. But that being said, young quarterbacks are going to have their share of mistakes and their ups and their downs. So I like the chances of the Broncos against the Texans, all due in proper respect to the Texans. And don't forget, too, that this starts now a 3-week-in-a-row stretch. Broncos won't be back here at home till around Christmas time. So the Broncos are on the road for 3 straight weeks. We go, the Broncos go to the Texans, then I believe the Chargers, and then Detroit.
Yes.
So, a good test top to bottom, but then again, who are the Denver Broncos now? They're the big bullies. They're the hottest team in the NFL. They won 5 in a row. They just beat up a real tough physical Browns team. So, the Broncos right now are the danger. The Broncos are the one who knocks, not the other way around.
That is, I love that. That was great. That gave me chills. Thank you, D-Mac, for joining us from the stadium. Appreciate you giving us the perspective from actually down there at Mile High.
You got it, brother. My goal in life is to somehow later tonight stand next to Victor Wembanyama. Vic Lombardi pulled it off, and I'm going to try to see if I can't figure that out as I leave the stadium to go over to Ball Arena. So somehow I got to get a picture next to Victor Wembanyama.
We will be looking forward to that picture on your Twitter account later tonight, D-Mac. Thank you, man.
Thanks, Robert. All
right.
Thank you.
All right, that is Darren McKee. He is on from 12 to 3, PhD, Columbus, Hastings, and DMAC every day on Altitude Sports Radio, 92.5, our FM sister. We are going to hit a quick ID here, come back and wrap things up for the No Huddle Postgame show. So we will hit a station ID right here and then be right back on Altitude Sports Radio.
KKSE, Parker, Denver. This is the No Huddle Postgame Show with Rob Triccilia on Altitude Sports Radio 950.
All right, it is the No Huddle Postgame Show. A win for your Denver Broncos, their 5th straight, a 29-12 win over the 7-3 Cleveland Browns. They dropped to 7-4. Your Broncos advanced to 6-5 and are in the midst of a wild card race in the AFC, surrounded by a lot of teams right now. So, Spring, real quick, I asked you before we had DMAC on right there. I don't know how much you've been watching these other wild card teams, but it feels like to me, and this is why I was leading you down this road a little bit, it feels like to me that the Broncos are the best looking one of them. I mean, I really like Houston, don't get me wrong, but the Steelers have not been impressive. The Browns have not been impressive. The Colts have not been impressive, and we all watched what happened with the Bills. So I just want to know what your thoughts are on the Broncos overall as a team versus just as the eye test versus other playoff teams in the AFC.
I mean, they look like a good team. They don't look like a great team, but they look like a good team, which is a far cry from looking like a god-awful team, which they've looked a lot like in the past couple years earlier this season. Russell Wilson, 13 to 22, 134 yards, is not amazing. He's barely over 50% completion percentage, 134 yards, but you know what? He made some throws.
Yep.
The throw to Troutman was great. A couple throws to Cortland, including one that was really good that got called back by a garbage OPI. Good throws, despite only throwing for 134 yards. No interceptions. Again, his touchdown to interception ratio, I think it's now 20-4. That's awesome.
Yeah.
He fumbles once, but whatever. He does it with his legs today. That's good. That's gonna happen when you're carrying the ball as a quarterback. You're gonna fumble from time to time, but he carries 11 times, 34 yards. They run for 169 yards. It feels like they ran for more than that today. It feels like as a team they ran for more than 169 yards. Like they ran the ball really well today. That was one of the better ground attacks I've seen from an NFL team this season. Take away, Christian McCaffrey doing his thing with the Niners. That was, it was spread out. It was 4 guys, 5 if Jaleel didn't get a lot, or 4 really. There's your 4th, but it was spread out. But it was good. It was efficient. It was a legitimate running game. This team is playing well with the good defense. And when you look at the rest of the AFC, even though the Broncos aren't blowing anybody away, there are flaws with every other team. So they're in the mix. They absolutely are.
Well, and I think it felt like they rushed for more yards today because they did it when they needed it. There were a couple times that they needed drives, and they just asserted themselves and ran the ball all the way down the field. And to your point, they're doing what they need to do, right? Like they're just flat getting it done. And let's hope that they can continue it next week against the Houston Texans as well. It looks like the Bills are ahead in overtime right now, but the Eagles are in range to try a field goal to tie the game in overtime. It is possible that this game ends in a tie. And I have no idea what that is going to do to the AFC wildcard standings. Just kind of a crazy situation that the Broncos are in right now. Currently tied with 3 other teams at 6 and 5. But like we said, this Bills game hasn't gone final yet. So it'll be interesting to see how that affects it going forward. All right, we are going to wrap things up on the No Huddle Postgame Show. Appreciate Mark Springer back at the Radio Machine, back at the headquarters. As we've had to be experimental with the phones, but we got it working today, and I appreciate you for that, Spring. Also appreciate Kaner and D-Mac for joining us, hopping on for 5-10 minutes to talk about your victorious Broncos. We will be back next week after Houston, which has changed, remember, to an early game. So we will be back next week after that for the No Huddle Postgame Show. Thank you so much for joining us, and have a wonderful night, everybody.
All right, nice and easy, bro.
Yeah.
Talk to you.
Appreciate you, my guy.
Have a good night.
Bye.
Later.
Okay, everybody who's on my stream, thank you so much for watching. We appreciate you all. Have a wonderful night. And thanks for putting up with it as we tried to figure out how to do all this. So, I think it worked out well. You feel free to hit me up on Twitter or whatever. Let me know how it sounded. But I think it worked out all right. So appreciate y'all and have a wonderful night.